Disfluencies. Integrate common English disfluencies naturally, especially at the start of turns or when formulating a thought. Don't overdo it, especially as the speakers are knowledgeable. Examples, sort of, kind of, snippet, host speaker. So what's the main takeaway here? Expert speaker, well, it's kind of complex, but basically. 2, fillers, pause, fillers. Use words speakers use to hold their turn or bridge thoughts. Examples, snippet, expert speakable. Right, and that leads to the next point. Host speaker. Okay, so it's not just about. 3, false starts, restarting. Mimic how people sometimes change direction mid-sentence. Examples, the sources say it's more about quit. They weren't able to finish. Snippet, host speaker. And that really affects, it changes how you approach the problem, right?
Yes.
Expert speaker. Exactly. It fundamentally shifts your perspective. 4, interruptions overlapping, simulated by line breaks. The TTS system reads line by line, creating a natural back and forth. Keep turns relatively short to enhance this effect. One speaker might jump in to agree or ask a quick question. Snippet, expert speaker, which can be really detrimental in the long run. Host speaker, right? Like a short-term fix. Expert speaker. Exactly. A short-term fix with much bigger downstream consequences. 5, back channeling, implied. While not written explicitly, the short alternating lines will simulate this listening behavior for the TTS. The content of the line should reflect active listening, e.g., short agreements, clarifying questions. Snippet, expert speaker, this idea of unhealthy self-importance. Host speaker.
Okay.
Expert speaker. And that's distinct from just, normal confidence. Host speaker. I see. 6, contractions. Use contractions consistently as they are standard in spoken English. Examples. It's don't, can't. That's where the UVS is. Snippet. Host speaker. So it's not something you can just ignore. Expert speaker. No, you definitely can't. It's always there. 7, informal language colloquialisms. Use more relaxed phrasing appropriate for a conversational podcast. Examples. Digging into that trips us up. Get out of our own way. Nailing down the flip side. Snippet. Host speaker. Let's really dig into that definition a bit more. Expert speaker, sure. So the sources are pretty clear on this. 8, shorter sentences fragments break down longer, complex ideas from the original script into shorter, more conversational chunks. Snippet, expert speaker. It hinders mastery. It stifles creativity. Collaboration becomes almost impossible. Host speaker. Wow, so it really hits on multiple fronts. 9, direct address engagement. Use you frequently to connect with the listener. Snippet, host speaker. And this is really relevant if you're trying to learn something new. Expert speaker, absolutely, because ego can tell you that you already know enough. 10, tag questions. Occasionally use tag questions to foster a conversational feel. Examples. Right. Tell, isn't it? Passat, doesn't it? Snippet, expert speaker. That makes it hard to see clearly, doesn't it? Host speaker, it really does. 11, transition words. Use natural spoken transitions. Examples. So, well, right place, right. Anyway, moving on. Snippet, host speaker. Okay, so we've defined it. What about how common it is? Expert speaker. Right, well, that's the surprising part. Expert speaker.
Welcome you. You've sent over some really fascinating material here, these pieces about ego.
Yeah, they definitely get you thinking.
Absolutely. And for this deep dive, we really want to unpack what these sources are telling us about ego. And maybe more importantly, why understanding it matters for, your own path of learning and hitting your goals.
Right. It's like getting a shortcut to understanding this powerful undercurrent.
Exactly. We're looking at these insights from, it looks like it's labeled 0.pdf here. To get at a core question, what is ego according to this material? And how does it act like an enemy to our dreams, our successes, and even our ability to bounce back from failures?
That's a perfect way to put it. And these excerpts, they give a very specific, almost practical definition of ego.
Not like the textbook psychology definition, then?
Not exactly. It mentions those, but the working definition here is really about an unhealthy belief in our own importance. That arrogance, that kind of self-centered drive, it's almost like a demanding inner child who insists on getting its way over everything else.
A petulant inner child.
Yeah, or just this constant need to feel superior, to have more, to be seen as more, even when it's not actually helpful.
Okay, let's dig into that a bit.
Yeah.
So we're drawing a line here between this kind of ego and just healthy self-confidence.
Definitely. The material's very clear on that. It even brings up that quote from Bill Walsh, the football coach.
Oh, yeah.
He talked about how easily confidence can sour into arrogance, or assertiveness becomes plain stubbornness, self-assurance slides into recklessness.
Right, that's the danger zone.
That's ego taking the wheel. And then there's Cyril Connolly's warning that ego sucks us down like the law of gravity. It's heavy stuff.
It makes you think it's this, inescapable force pulling you down.
Kind of feels that way sometimes.
Now, it's easy to picture ego belonging only to, like, really loud, boastful people, the classic egomaniac. But these sources are saying it's much more common.
Oh, absolutely. That's a key point. Ego isn't just for the caricatures.
Uh-huh.
It's a potential trap for anyone with ambition, with talent, with drive, anyone trying to achieve something significant.
So, really relevant for anyone listening who's focused on learning and pursuing goals.
Exactly. There's this great analogy in there from Lucretius about being like a sick man ignorant of the cause of his malady.
I like that.
Especially when you've had some success, it gets really hard to see how your own ego might be holding you back. You're focused on what you did achieve.
Not what you could be achieving if ego wasn't in the way.
Precisely. You can become blind to it.
Okay, so if it's this hidden enemy, how does it actually, trip us up? What's the real damage?
Well, the sources list quite a few things. It actively gets in the way of mastering a skill because it convinces you you're already good enough.
Right. Stuffs you learning.
It stifles real creativity, makes you closed off to new ideas. True collaboration. Almost impossible because ego always puts me first.
Yeah, I can see that.
It pushes away loyalty, limits how long you can stay successful because you get complacent. And it really messes up your ability to learn from mistakes and repeat success.
So it doesn't just block good things, it actively attracts bad things.
Yeah, the material calls it like Scylla and Charybdis drawing problems to you.
Wow. That's quite an image.
It is.
Uh-huh.
And there's that quote from Alcoholics Anonymous defining ego as a conscious separation from everything.
A separation.
Yeah, think about what that means practically. You put up walls. It's hard to work well with others because your agenda's too loud.
Okay.
Your view of the world, even yourself, gets warped. Feedback. You dismiss it or don't even ask for it.
Because you think you know best.
Exactly. You miss real opportunities because you're stuck in your own story.
Yeah.
And you can't really connect with what other people need.
That disconnect must be huge.
It really is. If you don't have an accurate picture of yourself and your abilities compared to others, what you have isn't real confidence. It's closer to delusion.
Right.
How can you lead or inspire anyone if you're out of touch with their reality and even your own limits? Marina Abramovich nails it. If you start believing in your greatness, it is the death of your creativity.
It just puts a lid on everything.
Pretty much. Ego builds its own ceiling.
It sounds so negative. Why do we fall for it? What's the appeal?
The sources suggest it offers this kind of fake comfort.
Fake comfort.
Yeah. I mean, trying big things, pushing yourself, that's scary, right? There's risk involved.
Sure. Failure is always possible.
So ego comes along and whispers things in your ear, tells you how great you are, how important. It soothes that fear, that insecurity.
Like a quick fix.
Exactly. But it's a short-term fix with really damaging long-term effects on your growth and what you can actually achieve.
That makes a lot of sense. Choosing the easy feeling now over the hard work. And it feels like today's world almost encourages that.
You've hit on something really important there. The material definitely argues that modern culture kind of pours fuel on the ego fire.
How?
Well, think about it. It's never been easier to just promote yourself, right? Build this big online persona.
Social media validation.
Constant potential validation, yeah. And we get all these messages telling us to focus on how unique we are, dare greatly, think big, be disruptive.
And the danger is mistaking the look of success, the swagger, the big talk, for actual success itself.
That's exactly it. We see successful people out there and we try to copy their attitude, their persona, thinking that's the secret sauce.
We mix up cause and effect.
Right. We confuse the symptoms with the cause. And yeah, some really successful people might have big egos, but the sources stress that history is also full of massive failures who are just as egotistical, maybe even more so.
So this isn't like a single battle you fight with ego and then you're done. It keeps showing up.
That's a really key insight. It's dynamic. The sources talk about 3 main stages where ego messes things up: aspiration, success, and failure.
Okay, tell me more about that.
When you're aspiring, ego stops you from doing the grunt work, from really listening and learning.
Makes sense.
When you achieve success, ego breeds that complacency, the arrogance, which often leads to a fall.
The classic story.
And then in failure, ego blocks you from taking responsibility, from learning the lesson, from actually recovering properly.
So it hinders building, maintaining, and recovering.
Exactly. And we all cycle through these stages, right? So managing ego has to be this continuous thing.
But there's hope. The sources suggest we can manage it, maybe even channel it.
Yes, absolutely. And it points to some amazing historical figures as proof. People like William Tecumseh Sherman, Katharine Graham, Jackie Robinson,
A lot of diverse examples.
Eleanor Roosevelt, Bill Walsh again, Angela Merkel, people who did incredible things, often against huge odds.
And the common thread is?
Groundedness, prudence,
Yeah.
realism. Even when they were on top or facing disaster. The point isn't that they had no ego,
Right.
but they knew when to put it aside. They had the discipline to focus on the bigger goal, not just their own need for glory.
What about the counterexamples, though? The sources mention people like Steve Jobs or Kanye West, known for huge egos and huge success.
Yeah, and it tackles that head on. It acknowledges them, but warns against using outliers to justify bad behavior.
Okay.
The argument is basically that nobody achieves real, lasting success because they're delusional or totally self-absorbed, even if you see those traits sometimes alongside success.
Ah.
You often see other negative things too, like addiction or being abusive. The suggestion is their best work probably happened when they fought against those ego impulses, not because of them.
Interesting. And then there are the purely cautionary tales.
Oh, yeah. The Howard Hugheses, Xerxes, John DeLorean, maybe even Alexander the Great towards the end. People who completely lost touch with reality because of ego.
Leading to disaster.
Total disaster.
Yeah.
They illustrate the real danger. And the sources also point out how even great people can swing back and forth between humility and ego.
And the ego moments cause problems.
Almost always. That vacillation itself is a risk.
So if ego's the problem, what's the solution? What should we aim for instead?
The material suggests that when you remove ego, what's left isn't emptiness, it's something solid. Rock-hard humility and confidence.
Humility and confidence, not opposites then.
Not in this view. Ego is described as artificial, stolen, self-appointed, almost like gaslighting yourself.
Okay.
True confidence is earned. It comes from preparation, from knowing you've done the work. It's real strength, not just posturing.
And there are examples of this contrast too.
Yeah, think about different Civil War generals or different types of scientists or entrepreneurs mentioned in the sources. One path is driven by needing to be the smartest guy in the room, needing to dominate.
Right, the ego path.
The other is focused on the task, willing to learn, willing to adapt. And the argument is that second path, while maybe less flashy, leads to more solid, lasting success.
So it comes down to a choice.
Essentially, yeah. Humility or ego, and being ready for the consequences either way.
It's interesting. The author shares a bit of their own journey with this in the prologue, doesn't it? It sounds like the book came from personal experience.
It does, and that context is really helpful, I think. They talk about their own struggles with ambition, success, failure, and seeing people they admired kind of implode.
Right.
That, plus their own challenges, made studying ego feel urgent, necessary. The tattoos mentioned ego is the enemy, and the obstacle is the way. They're like daily practical reminders.
Not just philosophical ideas.
Exactly. Learn through hard knocks, it sounds like.
And the author is careful to say this isn't some lecture from on high, but more like the book they needed themselves earlier on.
Precisely. The focus is much more on philosophy, especially Stoicism and historical examples, rather than just personal stories.
Makes sense.
There's that Demosthenes quote about virtue, starting with understanding and being fulfilled by courage. It's about seeing clearly, seeing yourself honestly, and then having the guts to fight, to stay that way, to resist that pull of ego.
That constant fight.
Yeah. And the analogy about the warped wood Aristotle, thinking you can't straighten it. Kant saying, maybe not perfectly straight, but straighter.
So progress, not perfection.
Exactly. We might not achieve perfect humility or zero ego, but we can always work towards being, straighter, less warped by it.
So the whole point of digging into ego, according to the author, is actually to help us get out of our own way.
That's a great way to put it. The final thought in that section is powerful. It's not about making you feel special or giving you a temporary high.
Oh.
It's about helping you think less of your own specialness. The idea is if you're less wrapped up in your own narratives of importance,
you're free to actually do the work.
You're liberated to actually achieve what you set out to do.
So pulling it all together then, this deep dive really shows ego defined this specific way as a major hurdle on pretty much any path of learning, achieving.
Yeah.
Just dealing with life's ups and downs, really.
That's definitely the core message coming through. It's this internal opponent that if we don't look at it, if we don't manage it, it can just sabotage our best efforts.
Right. So for you listening, as you continue on your own journey, learning, striving, maybe the big takeaway here is to ask yourself, how might seeing and managing my own ego actually unlock more progress, more understanding in what matters most to you?
It's a crucial question, a really vital one.
Definitely something to chew on as you keep exploring.
Yeah.
And with that thought, we'll wrap up this deep dive into the enemy within. But hopefully your own thinking on this, well, that's just getting started.